sweeps Wisconsin on the road, no less.
And for the first time in 41 years, Nebraska knocks off the top-ranked team in the country, and they are storming the floor. They are storming the floor. They are storming the floor. Love it. Sign your name, Fred Hoiberg. There's your signature win.
Line drive towards second. Caden Brumbaugh's there. He squeezes the line drive. And on a night filled with emotion, honoring our leader, Greg Sharp, with his eyes on the diamond and his hands on our shoulders, Nebraska takes down 16th-ranked Vanderbilt 6-4. Sharpie, that one is for you.
Now, here's Tom Stevens and Mike Melby on 1499.3 KLIN.
A 1-0 count to Sanderson. The pitch. Case bounces one past the first baseman down the right field line. More coming for Nebraska. Boland scores. Brumbaugh scores. It's a 2-run double for Sanderson. Nebraska starting to distance themselves here in the bottom of the 8th. It is a 7-3 Cornhusker lead.
And after falling in game 1 on Friday night in extra innings, Nebraska in a walk-off yesterday and today, a much easier victory. Josh Overbeek adds a single, an RBI single. After that hit by Sanderson, they win 8-3 today, and Nebraska is at 500 for the first time since February 21st. I believe at last check, still 11th in the conference. They had dropped to 13th after that loss on Friday night. So they still got some wood to chop, Mike Melby, to get into the Big Ten tournament. Only 12 teams make it into the Big Ten tournament on May 20th through the 25th. We'll see if Nebraska gets in, but you like the fact that they're finally at 500.
You do. You've got a tough Michigan team coming to town, though, next weekend. And then you're on the road at one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, Purdue, to close out the conference tilt. And I don't know, you got 6 games left, and realistically, you kind of feel like they need to go 4-2.
Yeah.
And, on the road, it's always tough.
I like the fact that they come back. They lose those Friday night games and they come back. I wish they wouldn't lose so many Friday night games.
I think Will Bolt wishes they wouldn't lose so many Friday night games.
This is a game. I guess the best quality is that they forget about wins and losses. They're able to bounce back after tough losses, and that was a tough extra innings loss on Friday night. They come back. Robbie Boland with the big single in the ninth to win it in a walk-off 5-4 last night. Then they're down for much of today's action going into the 7th. I think they were down. They came back. They leave that inning up 5-3 and then add a few insurance runs to finish it off.
Yeah, and Dylan Carey, I think, is who got the homer in the 6th.
Yes.
That really got him going, and it was one that I know in listening to the broadcast, they were talking right before that like Nebraska's offense just needs something to light the fuse, and kaboom, the ball goes flying out of the ballpark, and next thing you know, there's 8 runs on the board, and they pick up a much-needed victory, not only in the game, but the series, and we'll see if they can't get themselves into the postseason. Going to be a long road to get to an NCAA regional. They're going to have to rattle off lots and lots of wins here.
They're going to have to win the Big Ten tournament.
I think they probably will. So,
and they're doing pool play this year. It's kind of a round-robin pool play thing. Should be fun. At least, remember the one year, I think it was the COVID year, Nebraska didn't make the Big Ten tournament. Or maybe it was the year after. And that was kind of embarrassing. So they've still got some room to grow. Hopefully they can tack on a few more wins and get over 500. And we're not talking about this team missing the Big Ten tournament again this year. Let's get to the first pitch with Mike Melby.
Now the first pitch on Husker Rewind.
Kicks and deals the 2-2 pitch. Swing and a miss. Strike 3. Jackson Brockett has the first 9-inning no-hitter for the Nebraska Cornhuskers since 1954, and he did it on his 12th strikeout. The night belongs to 33.
You know what? I am going to change gears because kind of breaking news, and I'm more of a basketball fan than I am just about any other sport.
Me too.
19-year-old Frederick Leo Curtis. He is a 7-foot, 220-pound stretch center from Iceland who attends Cambridge Arts, Technology, and Sciences Academy in Braintree, Massachusetts. Committed to Arizona State in January, decommitted April 18th, and is looking for a new program. and he is currently in Lincoln, Nebraska, checking
Oh.
out Fred Hoiberg and the
Ooh.
Huskers.
Wow.
This young man last year averaged 15.4 points, 8.9 rebounds, and 1.7 blocks per game, while shooting 64.7% from the field and 42.2% from behind the arc.
So he played for Arizona State?
No, he committed to Arizona State.
Okay, he didn't play for it.
He's basically in a what do they call them? The academies that are like after high school.
So he would be a freshman.
He would be a freshman, class of 2025 freshman. He's a 3-star. Currently lives in or is attending the Cambridge Arts Technology and Science Academy in Braintree, Massachusetts.
Maybe a little bit of a project. Sounds like a little bit of a project.
He shot 42. It says he shot 42.2% from 3-point.
Well, that's
land
impressive.
at 42 of 102, which would not be 42.2%. But I'm not going to argue with the math that is.
Well, it doesn't sound.
I mean,
Braxton Mia was 7-1, right? And he never shot anywhere. I don't even think he attempted a 3 during his career.
Good reason. You saw he shot free throws.
Yeah.
At any rate, he is super, super talented. He would come in as a true freshman if he decides to come to Nebraska. But this is big. This is somebody that I literally would be excited if this young man chose to come to the University of Nebraska. I think, and honestly, looking at what he has done, this offense would be perfect for him. Would be absolutely perfect for him.
Absolutely.
Elsewhere, you already mentioned it. Nebraska wins today 8-3. They improved their record to 11-13 in conference. I think they still sit in 11th. Overall, the team is at 24-24. Creighton, the rubber match of the season series, is Tuesday at Haymarket Park, and then Michigan in town for 3 games. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the 9th, 10th, and 11th. Senior Day on the 11th. And then the Huskers finish up the baseball regular season Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the 15th, 16th, and 17th of May at West Lafayette against the Purdue Boilermakers. Nebraska softball, they have just posted the bracket. Nebraska will play the 11 a.m. game on May 8th, and they are the 3 seed in the tournament. They will take on the winner of Iowa and Penn State. Oregon top seed, UCLA 2nd seed, Ohio State the 4th seed. So if Nebraska gets by either Iowa or Penn State, they will take on more than likely UCLA. Ooh, so it does not get tough. Yeah, that doesn't get any easier, but they're
in the tournament though.
They're definitely
easily in the NCAA tournament. By the way, 3,021 people showed up. Program record yesterday at Bowlin Stadium. I don't know what the crowd was like today. I'm sure it was great. But Nebraska now 28-12, now 17-5,
38-12,
38. Oh, sorry,
38-12, 17-5 in conference. They win 9-1 today.
All right, 400 runs scored this year.
Man,
400 runs.
That's incredible. Nebraska volleyball in Ord yesterday. We'll talk to JB. Top of the 6 o'clock hour, I believe.
Yes.
And the voice of Nebraska volleyball. And we got to ask him about his color commentator yesterday, too. But Nebraska sweeps South Dakota State in front of 1,750 people at Ord High School Saturday afternoon, 25-18, 25-19, 25-17. And then they played a guaranteed 4th set at 25-19. Nebraska won that as well. Harper Murray, 12 kills, 7 digs, 5 blocks, 2 aces. Andy Jackson, double-double, 11 kills, 10 blocks. Rebecca Alec, 8 and 9 kills and blocks. T. Sigler chipped in 6 kills and 4 digs. Skylar Pierce, 6 kills, 3 blocks. Taylor Landfair, again, underperforming. Campbell Flynn, though, wound up playing the entire game.
Right.
Bergen Riley has a sore wrist.
And
Campbell Flynn looked absolutely.
She's really good.
She was a Gatorade Player of the Year last year in high school, and you understand why. I don't think there's probably much question that it is Bergen Riley's team, but Campbell Flynn will definitely push Bergen to get even better. I
agree.
Kind of expect Bergen Riley to be a captain this year. We'll see. We'll talk to JB and ask him about that.
I think that Danny Busboom has some decisions to be made. It's not always good to redshirt. They got away with it, Skylar Pierce, last year, and she's back. But T. Sigler,
they didn't get away with it with Caroline Juravicius
and then they had to face her in the national title game, and they lost.
Yep.
And I'm sure that goes through a lot of coaches' head. I mean, you'd like to save a year, bigger, stronger, faster, all those things, another year in the gym, but then you lose the chance, or maybe you have the chance of a player transferring, which is what happened with Caroline Juravicius. from what I've seen from T. Sigler or Ryan Hunter or Campbell Flynn, I don't know that you can afford to redshirt any of those girls.
I don't know. We'll ask JB. I don't know that you do. I don't even know that it's on the table. Laney Choboy very easily could have redshirted to save a year.
Yeah.
You had Lexi there. And now the other thing is, it's kind of interesting. Olivia Mock did not pack, I don't believe, her black libero jersey, and Danny Busboom Kelly was going to start her at libero, and she was not anticipating that. And so they had to actually switch numbers and jerseys in the second set so that Olivia Mock could be the libero.
By the way, I watched that entire game against South Dakota State. Nebraska's loaded. They took 4 sets. They only had to take 3 for a sweep, obviously, but they played the extra set just because they want to get the work in for all these younger people. She did the interview with Larry Putney. She was sitting on the bench and did the interview. So casual. She is comfortable in her own skin. Yeah, really, really comfortable. I didn't know, because I would be nervous as hell, not because you're the coach of Nebraska volleyball, which is enough to make you really nervous, but you're replacing a Hall of Famer, and she just seems like she's taking it in stride. I'm sure there are nerves, but she looks like there are no nerves at all.
There's talk right now with Dylan Raiola. He, this is I read in somebody's article here over the weekend. He's playing the position he was born to play, quarterback at Nebraska. I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, he was born to play football. He happens to be really good at being a quarterback as opposed to another skill position or an offensive lineman like his father was. But, was he born to play at Nebraska? That's what some people have written. I get it. But to me, Danny Busboom Kelly was born to have the success she did at Nebraska, the adversity she did that helped her grow. And then ultimately, it's like she was born to be Nebraska's head volleyball coach. And whether she's following John Cook, you already see the changes that she's made to this team. They run a system far faster than John Cook has run for possibly ever.
Yeah.
They're far more aggressive.
And Campbell Flynn's really good at it.
Oh, yeah.
She's really good at it.
I mean,
so which makes me think maybe she might have a chance. I have a story about Danny Busboom before she was Danny Busboom Kelly. I can't remember. I think it was Stars Hockey, something like that. That John Baylor said he had to do that. It was like a postseason game or something like that. This was a regular season game at Texas A&M. I'm on the bus, and there's Danny Busboom Kelly. I think she was a freshman at the time, giggling in the back of the bus. I mean, she did not seem like somebody that was becoming at that time going to become the head coach at Nebraska. She was so young and so immature at that time. And now to see the growth, it's funny. I mean, obviously you can't compare a 17, 18, 19-year-old. I think she was 19 at that time to what she is now, but never would have guessed it. Never would have. The last person on that bus I would have guessed at that time, but she always played with a joy. That's the thing I noticed about her. She just had a fearless joy about the game of volleyball. And I think that fearlessness is still there.
Well, I mean, you talk about, stars, and JB was doing that, and you were filling in all that. There were guys that came in that were, NHL prospects, first round guys, et cetera, and they'd be with the team. And I'm on the bus with them, and we're playing cards, we're, eating, doing whatever. And there were guys I immediately was like, they will never make it in the NHL. There is not a chance.
Right.
The talent will get there. We'll get them there, but they will never make it in the NHL. And I'll be honest, I never missed. I would have probably said the same thing from what you told me about Danny Busboom at the time. And I would have made that same assumption. I would have been wrong.
Yeah.
But on every single one of the guys that were supposed to be this end all be all type of player, none of them ever made it in the NHL. The flip side is there were guys that didn't have NHL talent that I sat there and I went, if they ever get an opportunity, they will thrive. And a lot of the guys did. And as a matter of fact, one of them that outworked and out-hustled and out-fought everybody that he went against was Brandon Bolig, and he's the only one with his name on the Stanley Cup that ever played for the Lincoln Stars. So,
is that the headlines?
Oh, yeah. Yep. We're pretty much through them all.
I do want to mention Trey Taylor's commitment to the University of Nebraska.
Yep.
16 years old. He's committed to the class of 2027. and he did the whole hat ceremony.
Yeah, that was pretty childish, immature, and
I
I'd
thought
be
it was.
embarrassed if I
This
was
is
him.
what he did on Thursday night. Trey Taylor, Chicago area quarterback, about to become a 5-star, some are saying. Here he is announcing his decision to go to Nebraska.
With that being said, I like to make my decision that I've been waiting for since I was in 7th grade when I got my first offer. I'm going to stay home and go to Illinois.
So he puts on the hat, takes it off, throws it away, puts on the rat, and that part is inaudible. You can't really even hear what he's saying. It's mumbled. It's kind of jumbly, and he's away from the microphone. You can't hear it. So he throws off the Illinois hat, puts on the Nebraska hat. Illinois fans were a little upset on Thursday night.
The excuse is he's a 16-year-old, and 16-year-olds do 16-year-old things, and I get that. But at the same time, I'm kind of, look at Dylan Raiola, 5-star guy that, committed to ultimately 3 different schools. I don't envision Dylan ever doing something like that. I mean, that's a character flaw that I hope he and again, I get it. He's
I don't know that it's a
old,
character flaw, but it was something that probably wasn't a good idea. No. The hat ceremony has happened for a million years.
Yeah.
Guys have been doing that. One of the famous ones that I remember is Emmitt Smith doing that exact same thing. He sat down, and it was videotaped at that time, but it wasn't live, I don't believe. But he sits down and he picks up the Nebraska hat, about to put it on his head, then puts it down, grabs the Florida hat, and says he's going to Florida.
Yep.
So that type of thing is, but this, he actually put on the Illinois hat and said, I'm going to Illinois. And then he waited a few more seconds and said, nah, I'm going to Nebraska.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that maybe it would have turned off Nebraska fans had he said, I'm going to Nebraska, and then thrown it off and put on the Illinois hat.
Yeah, I mean, the vitriol that I'm sure he's getting from Illinois fans, it's not deserved. They should be frustrated, but yeah.
And by the way, I don't get very excited about a recruit that's committing for 2027 and is 16 years old. His first offer came when he was in 7th grade.
Well, and
7th grade.
His head coach, his high school head coach, is a former NFL player. He knows what it takes, and he says that he is on with his quarterback's coach and several other of that coach's pupils on like Skype or a Teams call or something at 5:00 in the morning, and they're breaking down defenses, not just coverages, but entire defenses, where they're going through and figuring out based on the alignments what all 11 guys on defense are going to do, what their assignments are, and then at 6:00 he's going and working out. I mean, he's got the work ethic and the mindset to be a 5-star, to be a guy that comes and plays college exceptionally well for 3 years, is in the Heisman Trophy talk consideration, and plays for years in the NFL. You're seeing that with what you're hearing from that background and from a guy who played for 10 years in the NFL as his head coach in high school. The flip side is you have a situation like the unfortunate hat ceremony where you're like, man,
yeah.
I get it. He's 16. He's essentially 36 months away from taking a snap.
You know what, though? I've noticed not a complete difference, but a dramatic difference between last year's version of Dylan Raiola and this year's. He already seems much more mature than he did last year.
Well,
I mean, in 2 years, I don't think he'll say things like that.
No, I don't think he'll ever say anything like that again. But and I mean, Matt Rule said Dylan Raiola is 10 steps ahead of where he was last year. This time. So
and we'll see where it goes. I think it's impressive by the staff that they're able to get what people are saying is going to be, according to Rivals, a 5-star in the next 6 months. I mean, again, he's only 16. By the time he's an 18, maybe he'll go back to a 4-star. Who knows? Again, I don't get overly excited about a kid that can't even be here for another 2 years. We saw it with Dylan Raiola. I didn't get that worked up when he committed to Ohio State and then dropped them, and then Georgia. I thought actually Nebraska's best chance was to get him on the bounce back from either Ohio State and Georgia once he had played a couple of years.
Yeah, I thought he would wind up at Nebraska. I just figured he'd play a year somewhere else.
Yeah, I did too. So I'm not going to get that excited. I wouldn't be mad if he had gone to Illinois. Again, I think in this day and age, let's face it, Nebraska's got Dylan Raiola. They've got Dayton Raiola. They've got TJ Lateef. They've got Davia from the transfer from Purdue. They've got a lot of quarterbacks in that room. Does anybody really believe that all of them will be here in 4 years?
Well, absolutely not.
Well, certainly not Dylan. I mean, he's gone in 2. He'll be here till his junior year, probably.
Yeah, I would envision he
and then he commits then he goes to the NFL.
Yeah.
So I just I don't hold a lot against him. I think it was a bad decision. That's what I'm saying. All right, good decision to get Mitch Sherman on the show.
Yep.
We always love having him of The Athletic. Big show tonight, John Baylor at 6 o'clock. Of course, the voice of Husker volleyball, and Ryan Christopherson at 6:25 tonight. But Mitch Sherman of The Athletic coming up next.
On 1499.3 KLIN.
Welcome back, Tom Stevens, Mike Melby, Husker Rewind every Sunday, 5 to 7. Thanks for joining us. Joining us now on the studio line, Mitch Sherman of The Athletic. Hi, Mitch. How are you?
Hey, Tom. Mike, how are you guys? I'm good.
We're good. We were just talking about the commitment of Trey Taylor, 16-year-old, the hat ceremony, puts on the Illinois hat, takes it off, said, I'm going to Illinois, and actually waited a couple of seconds before taking it off and putting on the Nebraska hat. It's been done many times, but what do you make of when players do that? High school kids.
Oh, it's kind of childish, I think, but whatever. He's a child. I mean, and I don't mean that in a negative sense at all. He's 16. He's not a child in the sense that he's been through a lot, and has experienced things beyond what you would expect for someone his age in being recruited to many football programs, and has put a lot of thought into this choice, clearly. But I'm not losing sleep on either side of this. Like, if somebody had done this to Nebraska, I mean, let's say if Nebraska was hot after Jet Tamala, the quarterback from Millard South, and he did that, and then said, "Nah, I'm going to Iowa State." Like, okay, you'd maybe roll your eyes and then move on. He's 16. That's the thing. Like, if someone who's 25 does this, I probably have a different reaction. But it's not, like you said, it's not new. Players have been doing this for years. It's the trend. It's like, instead of going on Twitter now and saying for the next 3 to 4 years, they hashtag no interviews, like they put on the wrong hat. And he probably learned a lesson in that, like, more people are going to pay attention to what he does. And, I know Trey apologized for this, and it seemed to be like probably too big of a deal among some observers was made of it. I don't know. I mean, it's just in today's age of and I'm not trying to throw water on this, but like, in today's age of football recruiting, when a sophomore in high school commits, there are many, many steps that still need to be taken before he takes some snaps or starts a game at Memorial Stadium in a Nebraska uniform. So be excited that Nebraska's got a potential 5-star quarterback in the class of 2027. But the more important things are, of course, happening on the field. He can help Matt Rule and Matt Rule's staff get a head start and get momentum building in that sophomore class, soon to be junior class, which I will not downplay the importance of that. That's significant in everything that they're trying to do to build this program.
The other thing that he's already doing is peer recruiting, and 2027 Ohio State wide receiver commit Jameer Brown is good friends with him. And there's a picture of those two posed back to back. And I think Trey Taylor tweeted out, Husker Nation, how do we feel about this duo? So you gotta like that, even though
but 2 years away.
It's still 2 years away. I get it. Mitch, let me ask you about a guy that they did not get, Shamar Brown, who decided to go to Miami. Is this a big loss, or is this just a bigger opportunity now for Quentin Ives?
Yeah, I think both. I mean, I think it is a loss because you don't have a proven back behind Emmett Johnson. And I think from a security standpoint and how you feel about the running back position going into the season, for me, and I'm sharing my opinion on it. Like, I think that Nebraska should have. It did make an effort, but I would feel better about things for Nebraska if it had been able to land Marty Brown. It didn't work out, and the Husker coaches have said time and time again that they feel good about where the running backs are at. So they're the ones who watch them in practice every day. They've seen them through the offseason. We know what Nebraska has in Emmett Johnson. I don't believe we really have a great sense of what Nebraska has in Quentin Ives, Mekhi Brown, Connor Booth, Kenneth Williams, Jamarian Parker, on down the line. So there's probably, and I think there should be from a fan's point of view, some like an unsettled feeling, maybe some uneasiness about what's happening and what's happening at that position, like how ready Nebraska is. If it has an injury, to the wrong person, then it could be in a bad spot. And I don't know that we've seen from Emmett Johnson that he's ready to carry the load for, 12, 13 games of a season. Maybe he will be able to handle that, but it's not something that he's been asked to do at any point in the past 2 years when he's been a factor within the Nebraska offense. You want to have depth, and Dana Holgorsen said this spring that he hasn't been through a season where you don't get down to your third back at some point, and it's not just the third back that's unproven right now; it's the second back.
Yeah. Mitch Sherman of The Athletic and the Locked On podcast. You guys mentioned this on your podcast that sometimes Nebraska is not overly aggressive with guys. What we pay is what we pay. And if Miami is going to overpay or if Cal's going to overpay, we're probably not going to match it. And it doesn't matter, in some cases how good you are. And they've paid some hefty sums to get NIL prospects. I think Pritchett is probably one of them. I think they've got a few others on the roster that are similar, like Raiola, but it does feel like they're not overly aggressive. When they think this is the market value, they're going to stick with it.
Yeah, I would agree with that they're going to place a value on a player, and there are going to be very few instances where Nebraska is willing to go over the value that it sees for a player. Now, that value, of course, is in part based on need within the program.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's not like a player X can come onto the market in 2025 and then the same player 2 years later, and the value is going to be the same, regardless of what's going on in the transfer market, like nationally, to set the market. Like Nebraska may have a bigger need right now than it would in 2 years at a certain position, or vice versa. So all of those things factor into where they set a value for a player. And yeah, I think it's accurate, and it's probably a good model to continue to apply and to adhere to. That you don't want to overpay. If you see a player has a certain value in the portal, that's your offer. And all of this stuff is an evolving process with revenue sharing coming onto the scene, but we don't have final answers about how that's going to look yet. Maybe we'll get it this week. We're getting close to that 2-week point that the federal judge set for the NCAA and the major conferences to come back and have the settlement terms ironed out. And then once you get through that, you have to figure out how third-party NIL is going to work. So it makes it even more difficult to properly assess value for players when you're not even sure what the rules are for the system that you're working in.
Mitch, let me ask you about that. So it sounds like the hard cut to 105 is going to get phased in. So Nebraska still has a little bit of wiggle room. Mm-hmm. Were you surprised that kind of the first portal edition following spring football was a place kicker? And what does that pickup tell you about that room and the confidence in both John Hole and Tristan Alvano and the injuries that they both have faced over the last year?
Yeah, I think that's probably one that I don't know. I suspect that's one you wouldn't have seen if there hadn't have been this movement toward grandfathering in players who've been in your program or who are in your program by a certain date, and allowing them to be in the 105. So really, if that all works out, you won't have a 105 this year. It might be a 120 or it might just be the size of your roster. And then next year it gets closer to 105, and in a couple of years it is 105. I was surprised at that. I think that eventually with the roster being where it's going to be long term, you'll have 2 kickers as part of the 105 and 2 punters. And Nebraska has the 1 punter now with Camden Cook after the departure of Jack McAllister. They're going to go out and get a rugby style punter. So a little bit surprised, to see them take a third place kicker, but not shocked because of what's going on, the direction that this roster stuff is headed. And yeah, I mean, Hole was bothered by something this spring. We didn't see him kick in the Husker games kicking competition. He's been mentioned as someone who was a little banged up, and that's kind of where we were at with Tristan Alvano this time a year ago, and that turned into like a season-long thing. So it's not like, it's just a kicker, it's minor. We don't know. I mean, could this be something that's more significant? I don't know. But both of those guys have now dealt with injury things in the last year, and perhaps the addition of Kyle Kunanen from Charlotte is reactive to that.
I know you did a detailed look at the depth chart for the Athletic. What did you learn when doing that about Nebraska football?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't go too much into an order of depth. It was more like depth by position. So how many jack linebackers, how many cornerbacks does Nebraska have? What I learned is that they're still heavy on DBs, and they've actually added DBs to the overall number from this time a year ago, while cutting 30 from the total roster. So that there's there's room to trim there. And I know it becomes a human thing, it becomes a personal thing, and you can't just say, oh well, get down to 18 when you're at 26 now, because it's 8 players that who you're cutting, and that's a tough thing to do when they're in college. So it's not like just such a simple thing as to say you got to be at this number, but eventually that's what's going to happen. They're a little heavy at DB. At offensive line and linebacker, those are the 2 spots where I think Nebraska's like more fit and trim, like noticeably more fit and trim. And I'm actually feeling better about those positions after laying everything out in that roster exercise that I did last week than I was maybe going into the spring or even before I sat down and put all of that on my screen.
I'm going to make an assumption that the most confidence that you have in a position group might be wide receiver. And talk to me a little bit about that room and what you think of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange road to walk down because we've felt like that before. I think we felt pretty good about the wide receivers a year ago with the transfers that Nebraska brought in and some of the freshmen that it had and some of the returning pieces, and not everything played out as we expected in 2024. I wouldn't say it's the most confidence I have in any position group. I will say this. I think you can go into just about any Big Ten or SEC school and look at the wide receivers, watch them run, see their times, look at their overall athleticism, and you're going to come away really impressed. There's just a lot of good wide receivers who are out there. It's a premier position through recruit that schools can build depth through recruiting and through the portal too. It's relatively easy in comparison to like the lineman spots to find very good wide receivers from other levels of football. Whether it's if you're in the Big Ten, maybe it's from another power league. If you're in like Nebraska, got receivers from Kentucky and Cal. If you're or maybe you're going to the group of 5. Like I think all wide receiver rooms at the high level of college football look pretty good. So maybe the view is skewed a little bit. Like if you say, well, Nebraska's got a really good looking wide receiver room. Well, okay, where's it at in the Big Ten? Is it top half of the Big Ten? Like I don't know. We'll see. There's a ton of talent there. I like the diversity and the set of skills that Nebraska's got, like with size, experience, speed, just the different things that the wideouts can do. The youth in Cortez Mills and Isaiah Mosey and Quinn Clark. I think those guys are gonna have opportunities this year. Where I maybe feel best overall about the group, one position group, surprisingly maybe, but this is I think how I feel is the linebacker room.
Well, yeah, it feels
losing
like
what they lost. That's encouraging.
Yeah, and
it really is,
and possibly a walk-on could be a starter in Bowers. So it is an interesting room, and we'll see how it goes. We saw the spring game this year was part tractor pull, part wing eating contest, and it felt like there was some football there. But what do you think the future of the spring game, specifically Nebraska's spring game, will be?
I think it's very much up in the air. It'll be different than what we saw last Saturday or 2 Saturdays ago on April 26th. And maybe just the biggest difference is that they have more time to plan it and more time to promote it and more time to actually let fans know what it's going to be. I think part of the reason that the numbers were down in ticket sales is because they didn't announce that there was going to be actual football until about a week before the game. And then, it was a nice day, but people probably already had plans, and you very well might see a scrimmage worked back into it with some of the upper unit players, or maybe those days are done. Like Nebraska, I think it will pay attention to what's going on at the national level. I mean, coaches talk, coaches copy each other's ideas. It's just hard to know. I think spring is at like an inflection point, just where we're at nationally with spring football. Is it moving forward? Like, are we going to have spring football as we know it, or is this going to move maybe into like later in the spring, like in June when the team reconvenes on June 2nd after finals and they get a little time at home? Like, could that end up being the primary period of like off-season football training right there, like more in line with what the NFL does? I know Matt Rule's a big advocate of not getting rid of spring football, but what if it just shifted the time of spring football a little bit? We could be headed towards something like that, or maybe there'll be a bounce back effect because teams failed to make the same kind of money that they did in the past on spring games, and they're going to want to go back to a more traditional spring. I kind of feel like if I had to guess, that's not going to happen. Like that we're moving away from spring football as we've always known it.
By the way, how nervous were you catching a punt? That can't be easy.
Yeah, I was more nervous about it like in the week leading up to it because.
Did you practice?
No, I couldn't. I mean, I inquired at my kid's school. I've one at Gretna East right now, and another who will be there next year. And they didn't have a punt machine like a jugs machine that we used. And I wasn't going to ask their punter to come out and kick me. I don't need that. It's not that important. If they had a machine, I would have taken them up on practicing there. So no, I got no practice, and not just like no practice in the week leading up to it, but like no practice in my decades of my life. So never caught a punt. Like not like that. I mean, like maybe in the backyard.
Huh.
So yeah, I was nervous going in, but then when I got out there, I don't know, just tuned it out, catch the ball, and I almost dropped it.
But you didn't.
You didn't.
It bounced off my chest, and I was able to not fall down.
Secured it.
Catch it.
Yeah.
You, Mitch, you and Tom were discussing Nebraska NIL. Hey, we put a value on a player. Obviously, other schools have either more money, better organized collectives. Not exactly sure. I believe USC just came in and swooped in and took a basketball player that Nebraska may have wound up with.
I've heard him
said
$2.2 million.
$2 million.
Yeah. Apparently.
How, in your mind, is Nebraska positioned with NIL right now comparatively to, let's just say, the schools that they're, playing the game with, Big Ten and SEC schools?
Are you talking just football?
I'm talking across the board. We can focus on football though, because like I said, you got USC paying a kid $2.2 million to play basketball.
That's why I asked, because I think it's a different conversation at Nebraska if you're talking about football or volleyball than it is with every other sport. Like Nebraska is going to lead the market and try to lead the market in those sports. And that's not to say that it has the deepest pockets of any program in football. That's absolutely not the truth. Like Texas, Ohio State, those schools they're going to have more. Like they're going to. If Nebraska tries to play the game and say we want to compete with you and may the most dollars win, like that's not ever going to be, or very rarely ever going to be, productive for Nebraska. But I do think it's in the upper level of competitiveness in football. And it's a different conversation with basketball and some other sports. So but in football they're doing well. They're not number one, not number two or three, but and again, like this is you're like you're eyeballing this stuff or just like putting pieces together, because there's no list. There's not an unofficial list. There's not an official list. It's gathering information and hearing things in dark corners. But I do think that in what 1890 does in providing resources for Matt Rule's program, they're doing well.
Yeah, they just need Warren Buffett to give $1 billion and they're good in basketball, football, and all sports, really, which is never going to happen.
It seems like he's probably right. He's probably just about to get on that, right?
Yeah, I think so. He's got time. He's got plenty of time. So there you go. Hey, Mitch, we appreciate the time. It's always good stuff.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Mitch Sherman of The Athletic and the Locked On podcast, which I recommend. My old partner, Connor Happer, and Mitch, daily podcast. It's like 30 minutes. You get all your Husker football news, basketball. They do all Husker sports, kind of like this show. So I really enjoy it. They do a great job. Get right to the point. Let's get to break and come back with more. Mike Melby, Tom Stevens, Husker Rewind, top of the hour. John Baylor. We talk a little volleyball. They beat South Dakota State. Was that last night or the night before? Was that last night? It was last night.
It was yesterday.
2 nights. It was yesterday at 2:00. It was good. I enjoyed it. And we'll talk about it coming up.
Sports.
Nebraska's going to get a swing outside. Kelsey feed off the block and off. They did it. Nebraska national champions. Nebraska's a national champion. Go celebrate.
Back to Husker Rewind with Mike Melby and Tom Stevens on 1499.3 KLIN.
Welcome back to Husker Rewind. That's Tom Stevens. I'm Mike Melby. And I would like to say that I am so blown away and impressed because the Jack Mitchell softball experience summer 2025 team won today.
Wow.
20-1.
Didn't they get beat like 17-2 last week?
Yeah.
Or something like that.
And Jack pitched. And
did he pitch this week?
He did not. So here's Jack Mitchell's stats for today's game. DNP coach's decision. And he's the coach. So when he does not play,
go to a game.
When he does not play, they're pretty good.
Show live from a Jack Mitchell experience softball game.
We might have to do that.
That'd be fantastic. I would love that. But they won today. I'm very happy.
20-1.
Sovereignty won the Kentucky Derby. It was Bill Mott's second Derby victory. This time there was no doubt about it. No asterisk. 3-year-old Colt outdueled the favorite, Journalism, down the stretch to win the 151st Derby in the slop. I like it in the slop. My uncle was a jockey, and I used to just enjoy the mud flying, and he'd come out, and he would ride like 6 or 7 times a day.
Yeah.
Sometimes it'd only be 3, sometimes it'd be 5 or 6. But in his younger years, my uncle would ride at Exarban and State Fair Park and all around Nebraska.
Who was your uncle? I know you've told me.
R.L. Smith.
Yes.
He has hundreds of races to his name. But those guys take a beating. He was, especially in his 40s, he started to gain weight. And so he was doing unhealthy things like eating things and then throwing them up, or spending time in a sweat box to try to, because they all want to stay like at 110 pounds so they can ride and not be too heavy for a horse. And, but anyway, he was a really good jockey. I loved watching him ride, but I really liked watching him ride in the slop. We come out all muddy.
I wonder if you and I ran into each other, because from the age of 10 or 11 through 14, when the horses were at State Fair Park in Lincoln, I was there 7 days a week, and I helped, I'm air quoting if you're listening on the radio, train.
I did too. Occasionally I would walk the horses.
Yeah. I would hot walk them. I'd wash and dry and roll ace bandages. I'd help give the horses a quick bath. I'd muck the stalls, all that stuff. But I was around horse racing a ton. And
so was
the last
all summer long.
Yeah.
I would hang out with
4 years.
My cousin Kelly and Uncle Sonny.
Yeah.
That was his real name, Sonny, but R.L. Smith, Ralph Leonard Smith was his writing name. And we would hang out and just go around from track to track to track throughout the area.
Yeah, I helped a guy named Rob Ring. He was out of Kimball, and he had a stable of about 8 to 10 horses that he trained. And
that's cool.
Yeah. So, and then the last 4 years at the original State Fair Park of live horse racing, I missed one live race. I was at every one other than the one for the last 4 years that they raced.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely
probably not a great
racing.
life for a 10-year-old, which I was at that time.
Yeah.
Gambling and horse racing, and a lot of drunks. But I loved it. I loved hanging around the track, and we would just take the sheet and bet on horses. Although not with real money, we would just bet between us who we thought was going to win. We'd have a quarter, and we would trade it back and forth.
Now, do you know what happens this Friday?
No, what happens this Friday?
On the big track, the 3/4 mile that is now at Warhorse Casino.
Yeah, that's right. The
on
races
West End
begin,
Road.
right?
Yes.
Didn't
3
the race-
p.m. this Friday.
Okay.
First is the first post time.
It's like a 100-yard race. It's a very short race.
No. This is the full track.
Oh, now they're going around
Yes,
the first
full
one
track.
that I went to. It was a very short race.
Yeah, they basically ran like a quarter
They
horse
have
race.
to get their license.
Yes, they have to do at least one day of live racing. But no, it comes back alive. It is the full 3/4 mile track, which if you're wondering, like
Friday,
this Friday, 3 p.m.
All
the
right.
old State Fair Park track was 5/8 of a mile. And the new one is 3/4 of a mile. And it's 6, which is essentially 6 furlongs. That's one of the more popular racing distances is 6 furlongs. So.
You remember our old buddy Keith Nelson, who worked on Froggy 98 right there across the hall. He called the races.
Yeah.
And he would call them because he was an impressionist. He would call them sometimes in the voice of Johnny Carson, or sometimes just a random voice, and he would call the whole race, and he was great at it.
Yeah.
And he went from Lincoln to Kansas City doing it. So he did it for years.
Yeah. He's actually the reason I got into Stars hockey. He made a snide comment about one of the Stars players, and it just happened to be one of the tough guy on the team, Keith Roger. And courtesy of that, it ended his tenure as the backup and the fill-in for Gary Sharp.
I'd forgotten that he called Stars hockey before you did.
And so I got a phone call, and
that's usually the way you get into the business.
Yeah, it was
somebody
weird.
else screwed up, so you're on.
Yep.
The world's #1 golfer, Scottie Scheffler, had a weekend. He started the day at 23 under par, or started the first 2 days of the tournament, 61-63. One shot away from the course, or from the all-time PGA record, I believe, for the first 2 rounds. But he went into today with the largest lead since 2011, but he ended up shooting 31 under par. 31 under par.
I do that when I go back and play the old game Birdie King, the old video game. I can hit 31 under par.
I just don't. I mean, I love golf, and I love the PGA Tour, but I don't love it as much as I did before the LIV Tour existed. I think I would like to see, and not just 4 times a year, Bryson DeChambeau and John Rahm and Sergio and Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson, even Phil, who no longer has it. He's no longer competitive at a high level. But I want to see the big names. And you don't get to see them. You get to see Rory, and you get to see Scotty. Those are the 2 biggest names. Obviously Dustin, or there's some other guys. Jordan Spieth is still there. Justin Thomas is still there. There's some good names on the PGA Tour, but it being split up, they got to find a way to bring those 2 leagues together. I just don't think it's as entertaining as it could be.
Completely agree. And I mean, the LIV Tour isn't even a tour. The LIV Tour is an exhibition. I mean, it's 54 holes, and it literally is an exhibition. It's a sideshow circus. It's the Nebraska spring game this year.
Yeah. Well, and they allow them to wear shorts, and there's team names. They play individually, but they also play on a 4-man team or whatever it is. And in many cases, they're given 50, 67. I think Phil was given over $100 million just to join the LIV Tour.
Yeah.
The Saudis obviously have a lot of money, but it's ruined golf. It's split up the best names in golf. John Rahm was fun to watch, whether you like him or not. DeChambeau is fun to watch. I thought he was great at the Masters. The duo with Rory was fantastic. But we only get to see that. But we only get to see it. But part of the reason you root for a guy is that sometimes you root against the other guy.
Yeah.
And that makes it better. Let's face it. I hated Phil. I love Tiger.
Yep.
Some people love Phil and hated Tiger. It made golf great because you loved one and hated the other. We don't have that in golf right now.
No. And I'll be honest with you. I haven't followed since the LIV Tour came around several years ago. I genuinely have stopped watching golf. I just don't care anymore.
Well, they keep saying that they think they're close to an announcement to bring those 2 leagues together. I don't know how they're going to do it, because there were guys that were so loyal to the PGA Tour, didn't join LIV and take the big payout to go to LIV. And now you're saying it's okay, come together. Those guys are mad. They're going to be mad, I think.
Yeah.
John Baylor's never mad. He's always a happy guy, loves talking volleyball. And we're going to talk some next. The voice of Husker volleyball, John Baylor, is coming up next.
best recap of Husker sports. Husker Rewind with your hosts Tom Stevens and Mike Melby.
Welcome to the circus.
They'll hand it to him off the left side, looking and pay dirt. Ramir Johnson, the local boy, the Harlem native, punches it in for Nebraska, and they strike first.
Here comes the serve. Straight ahead, past Schumacher. Set in the middle, Schmeck out of bounds. We're done. Huskers win. Golly, grandkids. Nebraska sweeps Wisconsin on the road, no less.
And for the first time in 41 years, Nebraska knocks off the top-ranked team in the country, and they are storming the floor. They are storming the floor. They are storming the floor. Love it. Sign your name, Fred Hoiberg. There's your signature win.
Line drive towards second. Caden Brownball's there. He squeezes the line drive. And on a night filled with emotion, honoring our leader, Greg Sharp, with his eyes on the diamond and his hands on our shoulders, Nebraska takes down 16th ranked Vanderbilt 6-4. Sharpie, that one is for you.
Now, here's Tom Stevens and Mike Melby on 1499.3 KLIN.
Welcome, hour number 2. Big thanks to Mitch Sherman in hour number 1. We've got Brian Christopherson coming up in about 20 minutes or so. Nebraska volleyball team looks good. 4-set sweep of South Dakota State yesterday in Ord in front of 1,700 fans, sold out in like 27 minutes. Our next guest was there, John Baylor, who almost forgot about us. He was going to go bike riding with the kids, but I stopped him. I said, slow down. You got an interview to do with us. How are you, JB?
Very well. Still basking in the afterglow of Ord, Nebraska.
How is Ord?
On yesterday. Beautiful.
Is it
2000? It's the county seat of Valley County, and the place was all fired up. I hope people got rides home. They were celebrating early yesterday at the sports bars. They're spilling out onto the streets. I love it.
Yeah, you'll probably go back to Ord soon. It'll be your new home, your vacation home, Ord, Nebraska.
If you're not happy in Ord, you got a big problem being happy.
Nebraska was happy yesterday while they played really well. Harper Murray, no surprise there. The usual suspects, Harper Murray, 12 kills. Andy Jackson, 11 kills. Rebecca Alec was good. But T. Sigler, already been compared by John Cook to Michaela Fecky. What's going on there?
Those are big shoes. She's arguably the greatest player in the history of Nebraska volleyball.
Yeah, well, she's one of them.
Even Jordan Larson in the conversation, Sarah Pavin in the conversation. I'm slowing down. I think you got to give it to Fecky because Fecky got there when the Huskers had not been to a Final Four in 6 seasons, and she went to 4 straight with 2 national championships. Hello.
Yeah.
And Jordan did a nice job too, but as far as their 4-year Husker career, I don't know how you can do anything more than Michaela Fecky. And by her senior year, Nicklin Hames, a true freshman, is the setter. And you have Jazz Sweet on the right side. You got a redshirt sophomore Lauren Stivrins in the middle. You had Lexi's son on the outside playing her best season for the Huskers. It was her first season, her sophomore season. But they were setting Michaela Fecky half the time, and the opponent knew it and couldn't stop her. It was just stunning example of just an individual carrying an entire team. And that team had Stanford 9-9 in the 5th in the championship match. A Stanford team that won 2 other national championships. Just stunning.
Well, and if you're ever having a bad day and you need it to get changed, pull up the video of Michaela Fecky in high school when she smoked the dude that was going to the bathroom. It's still one of my favorite videos to watch.
Really? When I go on this, it's YouTube, right? That's like a fancy platform where you watch stuff.
Yeah, you can get it on the computer. Al Gore invented it. The web.
I watch Larry Bird videos when I need to get cheered up, but I'm going to start watching Michaela Fecky videos. That's a great suggestion.
But what do you think about? I mean, not only T. Sigler, you got Ryan Hunter, you got some of these younger players. Skylar Pierce played really well. She had 6 kills. You had Campbell Flynn, who did the whole night. She was your setter because Bergen Riley had the wrist injury.
Yep.
I think, and I talked about this with you earlier. It feels like Danny Busboom's got some decisions to make with the roster. I mean, you can't redshirt girls these days. That's been proven.
Yep. They're women. They're young women, but I don't think you can redshirt, except in rare occasions, like Skylar Pierce last year, willing to be redshirted. That was very unusual. But it's not clear that everyone's going to stay. I mean, you just got to look out on the floor and ask yourself, everyone in the jersey, except for maybe Maisie Bosinger, was a top recruit in the country. And the question becomes, are you going to sit and watch? Because the writing is on the wall. We got 2 middles freshmen joining us still. And we've got a great transfer, 6'4" lefty, Ali Check, coming from Baylor. So I hope everyone stays, but they probably won't. But even with everyone who will stay, which is the bulk of the people you mentioned, you're going to have some really tough, happy choices to make.
Can you have too many weapons? I mean, can you almost like, it feels like as a setter, who do I pass it? By the way, your partner, Lauren Cook, should be happy because they're setting middles all the time.
Oh, unbelievable. I've never seen a team, forget about a Husker team, I've never seen any team set the middle so often. It's only 2 exhibitions, but this is going to be impossible to stop because it's happening so fast and it's pinpoint accurate, and it's been with 2 different setters. But you can never have too many weapons on the floor. The question is, can you have too many great players on a volleyball team? And I think the answer is yes. I mean, when you have the greatest team, in my opinion, one of my favorite teams, put it that way, the 2008 Huskers, they had no depth. And what that allowed Amanda Gates to do and what that allowed Jordan Wilberger to do is just play with abandon because they knew they weren't going to get pulled out. And they just got better and better and better because there was just no depth. So, if you've got a lot of good players and you're substituting a lot when kids struggle, that can be tough on a team's morale. So most teams, you can never have enough depth. But in volleyball, I think there is such a thing.
One of the things that everybody kind of had questions on coming into this season is the head coaching position. Danny Busboom-Kelly has come in, and this is not John Cook's rodeo anymore. That is obvious. The Huskers are playing faster. They're doing things, and I believe I read a comment from her about Olivia Mock had not brought her black jersey, her black libero jersey, not anticipating to play, and Danny Busboom-Kelly was going to start her, and they ultimately wound up switching uniforms. Talk a little bit about that and just that the differences you've seen, granted through a couple of spring matches, but how has it been with Danny in charge?
Well, the offense is different, and that's visible. But then in practice, they have a lot of different drills, and coach really would pre-plan every minute of the drill. And it was pretty much every minute of the practice, and it pretty much was the same drills over and over and over in the same order. With Danny, it's different most days, and it's planned. I mean, there's no downtime, but it's different. There's a little more variety, and she's brought some drills that Coach Cook has never seen before. He thinks are great. One he explained yesterday on the air when he joined us was a drill which you don't rotate until the 6 on their side of the net have gotten kills from each of the front 3 positions, the left, the middle, and the right. Well, if you've done the left and the right, the defense knows you've got to set middle. So they know it's coming. It's really tough to do. And then you've got to force it if you get a bad pass. So it really teaches a mentality of, making sure you don't get into a rut and just keep setting outside and focusing on the middle. And I think it's part of this transition they're making into really forcing the middle and forcing the right side so much more often than we've seen in years past.
Yeah, and it's she said it yesterday. She was talking with Larry Putney on TV, and she talks with you, obviously, after the matches. But a lot of good on good in practices. I remember hearing Tom Osborne talk about, ones versus ones. You set the ball on the 10-yard line, and those practices on Thursday before a game were pretty bloody. I kind of picture the same thing going on with volleyball. I don't know what goes on because I don't go to practices, but it feels like the same type of thing.
And there's so little drop off. I remember when I was in high school, I was always involved in 3s versus 3s. But, but maybe sometimes 4s were on 4s. But I think they split them up. And also there's no clear starters. I mean, we know Andy's going to start. We know Harper's going to start. But that's kind of it. I mean, and Rebecca, I think, is an automatic now because the other 2 middles are going to be brand new freshmen. But I'm not sure Bergen Riley's a guarantee anymore.
Right.
Returning 2-time first team all conference, the first player ever her first 2 years to be the conference setter of the year in the Big Ten. And here she is with a real challenge, the number 1 setting recruit in the country, the national Gatorade player of the year. And Campbell Flynn, who's a lefty, that adds a lot to your offense. When she's in the front row, she's not just a tipping or a two-shoot threat. She's like an attacking threat as a left-hander up there. So, Bergen's a fabulous setter, but how do you ignore what Campbell Flynn did yesterday for 4 lengthy sets? Is really impressive.
So go back through that again. How is she different from Bergen? Campbell Flynn.
Bergen's a right-hander, and remember, because most human beings, especially women volleyball players, are right-handed, your setter positions herself on the right side of the front row. And that's where she wants to receive passes and receive digs, because she's typically going to set to her left because the middles and the left sides are right-handers. So their hitting arms or attacking arms are on the inside of their bodies where the ball's coming from. Now, if you had a team full of left-handers, you'd position the setter on the left side of the court for the same reason, but you're not going to do that because there's so few lefties. So you position her on the right side. Well, so her right shoulder is right next to the net. So she's receiving a pass. As a right-hander, all she can do is tip it over, right? If she's a front row player, so she can attack, right? If she's a front row player, she can attack. So she gets a high pass, she jumps in the air, pretends she's going to set, she takes her left hand and flicks it down. But if she's a lefty, she doesn't flick it down. She winds up and fires it down, and that's what Campbell Flynn did a couple of times yesterday. I mean, it's like a ferocious attack that's coming at you as a surprise. It's a weapon. I mean, Micah Hancock's one of the greatest setters, still is, in the world, because in 13 and 14, when she led Penn State to national championships, she had this wicked attack, and she played front row 3 rotations. And so during those 3 rotations, you thought they only had 2 attackers front row and then the back row attacker. No. They had Micah Hancock, who was an attacker front row as well. And she wouldn't take she wouldn't set it and attack on a third contact. She'd attack on a second contact, all just really adding an element of surprise. There were times when Andy Jackson was uncovered by the South Dakota State block because they anticipated that Campbell Flynn would attack. I mean, just unheard of stuff if you had a right-handed setter.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she's good on the block as well. I mean, she's really good on the block.
She's 6'3". So she's a lefty. I can't remember the Huskers ever having a lefty setter. Oh, yes, Michelle Lynch. Michelle Lynch, I just remember 20 years ago. She's now a fabulous biology teacher at Lincoln High School. And her husband is John Schutz, Kevin Schutz, who was the Channel 1011 sportscaster. She was like our only lefty setter, but she was injured a fair amount. But it's a whole another weapon in the front row. Now, Bergen Riley is a second-team All-American, so we need to slow down here. But Campbell Flynn's been impressive.
Yep.
JB, heading into the summer, what does the volleyball team do? Is it a little bit of time off and then come back and start going through lifting, conditioning, etc.? We know a little bit about football just because that's the sport that we've all followed for however many years. But what is the summer like for the volleyball team?
Well, it started today, and no more bringing the team together with the coaches until August, or maybe it's late July because they start so early this year. Maybe they play like the third weekend of August, so they might actually convene together in late July. But early August typically is when teams get together. Until then, the players are on their own. They got finals coming up, and then the rest of May they're on their own. They come back early June to work camps, but there are really no organized coach-led activities. But of course, the team gets together with the trainers. They are on a minimum 4 or 5 day a week workout schedule, but it's a time when they can hopefully, rest their bodies, rest their minds. And it's been a long spring because remember with Nebraska, the same players play beach. So they went 4 or 5 weeks beach, and then they had, 4 weeks of indoor. Now they get like 3 weeks, finals and relax, and then back for camps. And then next thing you know, it's the end of July.
This is crazy. I mean, watching this team last night, it felt like you're watching one of those Duke teams of the Krzyzewski era, like one All-American after another. I mean, there's so much firepower on this team. This is going to be fun. And they're adding more. More.
Allie Check's going to show up 6'4", lefty, the portal swinging wide open. I mean, you've got the great right side from Florida who's in the market right now. I think she's headed to Kennedy Martin. She's 6'7", and she's a force. And whoever gets her is immediate favorite to win the national championship if it's Texas or Wisconsin or Nebraska. But I think Nebraska's okay on the right side, and it's got a lot of players it's trying to keep happy already. And also the budget. I mean, the talk that Kennedy Martin is asking for not just 6 figures, but significant 6 figures is probably something that Nebraska wouldn't have an appetite for. Whereas Wisconsin needs a right side. Their transfer from Miami, Grace Lopez, we saw her in the second round. She tore an ACL. So they don't have an elite right side right now. So they need her. So I anticipate she'll go to Wisconsin. They're going to open the checkbook for Kennedy Martin. And then, but if Texas gets her, Wisconsin gets her, they're probably immediate favorites. She is probably the most potent offensive force in the country right now.
Do you think volleyball can be even more popular than it is now?
Yes. The question is, though, whether the new era where the wealthiest get better and the less wealthy probably do not.
Yeah.
Will that compromise this surge in popularity? And there's no sign that it will. I mean, NIL has been in full action for 2 years, and television ratings for all sports in college have never been higher. Ticket demand has never been higher. So it's like when baseball went to free agency in the 70s, everyone thought that it would collapse the sport. Well, people were kind of excited to see Reggie Jackson in an Orioles jersey.
Sure.
And, we're packing the stadium. So, but I just see, the Wisconsins and the Nebraskas and the Texases and maybe a few other teams stockpiling the best athletes each year. And we were just in an era pre-NIL when there were really, 8, 9, 10 teams with at least a puncher's chance of winning a national championship, double what it was 15 years ago. And that, I think, added to the interest level of the sport.
Yeah.
That, I think, is contracting now. And so will that affect viewer interest? We'll find out.
Great stuff. Go ride a bike.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm not going to help OPEC. We are going to be on human-powered bicycles.
All right. You hanging out with the girls tonight? Where are you going? Who's
I got my son Prince and I are going on a bike ride.
Nice.
And we're not helping Saudi Arabia. We're not jumping into a big old tundra and driving across the prairie. We're human-powered.
You're the best, JB. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
See you, JB.
John Baylor, voice of Nebraska volleyball. He breaks it down. He's really good at what he does. He should continue to do that, and I think he will for a long time. Let's get to break. Come back with more BC. Maybe throw in some basketball conversation.
I think we need to.
He covers basketball for Husker 24/7. What's he think about your 7-footer that's in town? Maybe he knows
Frederick
something.
Leo Curtis.
Yeah, it's a name we can actually pronounce. We don't have to just say Oogie. Well, you don't anyway. I do.
Yeah.
But we'll talk a little basketball, talk a little football. BC, Husker 24/7 is on the way.
Husker Rewind with Tom Stevens and Mike Melby. Two guys old enough to actually remember Nebraska's 5 national titles.
Man, woman, and child did that. Put them in the aisle.
On 1499.3 KLIN.
One of my favorite songs that I hated.
You hated the Don Henley version?
I hated the Don Henley version, but the Atari's version, I don't know why. But love this version of it.
Yeah, but you were a metal guy. You couldn't like the Eagles.
I don't like any classic. What we considered classic rock, that's, early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, that type of stuff. I never was a big fan.
Quick story about the Eagles. I saw them when they played PVA, and it didn't feel like they were in a great mood. Glenn Fry it was like the last couple of years of his life. He didn't know that, but Glenn Fry was great. Don Henley was just in one of those moods, like, I don't want to be here. But the Nebraska, you know how Nebraska people are. They will you into having a good time.
Yeah.
And they cheered every song so much that he was smiling by like the 5th song. I think Nebraska people just have a tendency to do that to people.
Do you know who else has a tendency to do that to people? Our guest, Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7.
Exactly.
Every time somebody sees Brian, they just smile.
Yep, that's right.
BC, how are you?
Oh, that's very kind of you. That's not true at all, but
I've never seen anybody frown when they see you. I've never seen that.
Well, I've seen my wife frown when she sees me, but yeah, there's been a few people. You ever hear a song, when you guys were talking about music, you ever hear a song that you couldn't stand when you were 16 or 17 years old, but
Sure.
now you hear it and you're like, I'm all right with it now. Like you've come, it's like you start to like, equate it to your time, your youth, and it's like, okay, I'm with it. So I have that happen quite a bit.
They say that the songs that you hear when you're 17, 18 are the indelible songs for the rest of your life. I don't know if that's true or not. It might be.
Not really. That's going to say, I'm
It's
thinking
probably
back.
completely-
What
completely
surprisingly, as much of a metalhead as I am, I was not a Metallica fan when they first came out. I don't know why, because they're still one of my all-time favorite bands now.
Mm-hmm.
But when they first came out, like one of the first songs I ever heard from them was the song "One," which is one of the most epic songs in the history of heavy metal.
They grew on me as well. I didn't like Metallica when I first heard them. So
BC, you a Metallica fan?
Yeah, I'm all right with them. I'm not like a diehard, but I'm okay with them. They're one of those bands that I came around to later too. Led Zeppelin was like that. I was like 26 one time, and late at night, I like suddenly realized I like Led Zeppelin. I still remember the exact moment that happened.
Well, that's a pretty good band.
10-17 on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, they're definitely top 10 band of all time. Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. We'll get into basketball, but we haven't had you on for a while. The spring game, I'm sure you were there. Kind of a carnival, a little bit of football, and we've discussed whether or not it's going to continue. Certainly, maybe not in that vein. What's the future of the spring game in your mind?
Hard to say. I actually wasn't there. I was
You weren't
on
there.
the trip last weekend.
Okay.
With my family.
Oh, that's right. Golf trip.
So I didn't. So I can't be an expert on what we saw and what was good and what was bad. I heard mixed reviews from people on our board. I think they'll probably have to tweak it a little bit. I honestly wonder though, even if they had played a regular spring game, I think the number would have been down. If you looked across like college football this year, even the schools that stuck to sort of the spring game as we knew it, they didn't, for the most part, draw the same crowds that we've sort of seen in the past. I do think it's something that just college football and universities as a whole have to think about, is how to keep like fans engaged, like in, that these months in the off season, because I think there's a lot of people right now who are kind of a little bit, they're down on college sports and sort of the landscape of things. And so whatever you can do to show your support to them, I think you got to think about long and hard.
Do you think it's going to happen where Nebraska would scrimmage Kansas State or Iowa State down the road?
I don't know. I hope so. I've hoped that for like 15 years though, and it's always seemed like something so distant. you do have, as much as people sort of get annoyed with Deion Sanders, he's actually like the right guy to sort of spark that conversation the way he did, I think, and maybe have it lift off the ground a little bit. So, I mean, if they figured out a way to do that, and you had a game that didn't count, but brought together two programs in April, I mean, that would be an awesome thing. I just think they do have to think about stuff like that, because the one thing the NFL is amazing at, as you guys know, is they can steal headlines like all year long with different things. I mean, they can figure out like, okay, we'll have our scheduling show on this day, and it'll intercept all the other sports. And I think college football has to think likewise and see if you can find different avenues in this time where, like in March or April, it's like, okay, you're kind of drawing an audience when you normally wouldn't.
I want to switch gears really quick because it just popped up on my Twitter feed that there is a gentleman by the name of Frederick Leo Curtis in Lincoln today, and he's checking out Fred Hoiberg's basketball program. He is a 7-footer out of Iceland, currently attending Cambridge Arts, Technology, and Sciences Academy in Braintree, Massachusetts. If you tell me that we can add a 7-foot, 220-pound guy that shoots 42% from three, I'm good with it.
Yeah.
What do you know about him?
I don't know a ton about him. I know that he was an Arizona State commit. He decommitted. He had like Indiana, though, and West Virginia that were different schools that were looking at him. I know he visited the Hoosiers. He's had some big programs looking his way. So the fact that he's on campus, I think is nice for Nebraska. And the thing people have to realize with this house settlement case, we're all sort of focused on it from the football angle of how they might not immediately go to the 105-man roster because of it. It also could affect basketball because it was thought that you had to have a hardline 15-man roster. And at the moment, Nebraska actually has 15 guys on its roster, not that someone couldn't leave and you can make room for someone, but they might not even have to do that. You could potentially at this point, if the judge in that case gets her way, which I think will ultimately happen, we won't have a 105-man football roster, and we wouldn't have the 15 hard limit in basketball, which would allow you to make an addition like this without anybody moving on. So 7-1 sounds good to me if you have the resources to get him on campus, and other big schools have been interested. So obviously he's a guy that has some skill sets that are attractive to folks.
And it does seem like Fred is going back to that recipe where everybody could shoot. Nebraska struggled shooting the basketball this past year. The year before with Casey, not as much. But they've added some pieces. Kendall Blue looks like he could shoot. We know Jamarcus Lawrence can. Will Cooper, Rink Mask can certainly shoot the basketball. Connor Sejan. It feels like this is the type of team that Fred has always wanted to put together, to me.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track with that, Tom. I mean, before we got to the Crown tournament where Nebraska did make some threes, actually,
yes,
they had made like 100 less for the year, like an average of 2 less per game last season from the year before. And I've always said this, like, people are kind of down on Sejan, and I understand there were some big moments where the shot didn't fall for him. He actually had the same 3-point percentage as Casey the year before, but the difference was Nebraska did not have like those third or fourth options that you thought could go off from deep in a given game. Like, I mean, I always bring it up, like the year Nebraska made the tournament 2 seasons ago, Casey had a bad game against Wisconsin. CJ Wilcher picked it up. At Indiana, that one game, Jamarcus Lawrence went off. And so I think you're seeing with Lawrence back and Price Sanford coming in, Fred is loading it up with options where one guy could potentially go 1 for 5 from 3, and you can survive it because the guy next to him goes 4 for 5 that night. And so it's not just on one guy's shoulders. So I think Price Sanford is a major get. I think Fred thinks he can be one of the better shooters in college basketball. He's actually tracking at a very similar pace to what Peyton Sanford did at Iowa his first 2 years, and Price's first 2 seasons were kind of like that. So if Price continues on that path, Nebraska would get a pretty good player. If he were exactly like Peyton, he'd average like 16 a game next year. We'll see about that. But That's what Peyton did, and they're on sort of the same trajectory at this point in their careers.
I want to jump quickly to baseball and it's an interesting team that Nebraska has this year. On paper, they should be 38 and something, and they're not. They're 24-24. And any thoughts as to why they have not fulfilled kind of what was expected of them so far this season?
I mean, some early arm injuries I think hurt, but also it's been harder than I thought it was going to be offensively for them. I give them credit for scrapping the last 2 days against Minnesota, and I don't want to take away from those wins. Minnesota, of course, is kind of at the bottom of the league, though, and Nebraska had to fight like heck, and Minnesota, of course, was fighting for their season's life this weekend too. But I just feel like some guys you thought you would maybe get a little bit more of at the plate have sort of been inconsistent. The bullpen's been up and down. Thankfully, today they were on. They really came through and pitched. They got the last 13 outs of that game, and yesterday they did well also. So, the best that can happen now is they're 11th in the Big Ten standings, which doesn't sound great. It's not, but you got to get in the top 12 to get to Omaha. It's going to be a lot tougher, of course, to go on a run this year with some of those West Coast teams involved. And Iowa's having a great year, but you just got to get in. You got to get into the dance, the Big Ten tournament, that is, and have a home crowd. Maybe you win that first game, you get a little juice going, and who knows what can happen. So that's got to be the mission now. And that's why after Friday night's disappointment, which it really was, an extra innings loss, the season was kind of on the brink, I felt like, the last 2 days, and they managed to get wins. So now they got to go win a series against Michigan. I know the game Creighton, people want the in-state, advantage there. These Big Ten series are what matter the most, though. You have 6 games left. You got to make sure you're in the top 12.
Yeah, when you have a tournament in Omaha, you got to make that tournament. It was kind of embarrassing when the year that they didn't make the tournament. I know we're bouncing around a little bit, but I want to go back to football because Nebraska got a big commit, a quarterback for 2027 to Trey Taylor, but they also lost out on a running back in Marty Brown. To you, bigger news that they got their quarterback or they lost their running back?
I think it's bigger news to the fan base that they lost the running back, honestly. And the reason, and this isn't completely fair to kids anymore, but people see okay, this 27 quarterback committed, he signs in 16 months. They just don't have a lot of faith. And I understand it, that a person's necessarily going to stay committed, or even if they do, you'll get a lot of skepticism. Well, we'll see so-and-so in the portal in a year or two. It's really sort of made a pessimist of a lot of us, and it's kind of unfortunate. I do think, though, to say something about quarterback Trey Taylor, he's a guy who was being recruited and actually got his first offer when he was in the 7th grade from Maryland. And just listening to some of the stuff from back then, I mean, he was reciting in-saw sets and all the audibles when he was 12 years old. So they got a really sharp QB. And we're also to that point where people should be excited, as long as it holds, that I think you think Dylan Ryle is the quarterback the next 2 years. And then there's probably a thought at that point, if Dylan does really well and it goes as hope, maybe he moves on to the next level or whatever. And the door's open for a competition where you got guys like Dayton Raiola and Trey Taylor. And so I think Trey Taylor looks at Nebraska's situation and says, Dylan Raiola doesn't really affect me. And so Nebraska actually managed, I think, to get through sort of a difficult window that last year or so, where it's how do you convince quarterbacks to come here, right? If you know that Dylan Raiola is the guy for a couple of years, and now they're past that. So that's a good thing. But real quick, I mean, to your question, I just think there's so much anxiousness behind Emmett Johnson and what do you have there? And there's nothing that's proven. This coaching staff believes those guys have developed well, that Quentin Ives is going to be ready. But I understand where the fan base is I'm going to have to see that before I believe it for sure. I do think EJ Barthel made a good point in the spring, though, when he said, a year ago at this time, we were developing Dante Daldell, and, he's right. We weren't talking about Dante Daldell as a sure thing being in the rotation after the spring game last year. That was very much a question mark. And so they got him to come along, and they got to do it with Ives and a guy like Mekhi Nelson or one of those true freshman backs now, because they have a big bet on those guys being good.
You know, one of the things that you look for when you see a guy, especially a quarterback, commit is how are they going to do it peer recruiting? Well, he's been a Nebraska commit for 48 hours now, and he's got a photo of him back to back with the number one wide receiver recruit in the 2027 class, 5-star Jameer Brown, who's committed to Ohio State. And he tweets out, "Hey, Husker Nation, how do we feel about this duo?" I love that. I don't care if it's 2 years away. If that's what he's going to be able to do, and who knows.
And that's a pretty good. I think that's a good point, because Dylan Raiola, when he committed, there wasn't a lot of time for him to recruit peers, right? He didn't recruit a couple of years out.
Yeah, it's a huge point. I mean, we've seen since then, what the impact of having a QB that people believe in is like, because Dane Key and Isaiah Hunter are here as portal guys because of Dylan. But you're right. When he was a recruit, that happened in December. So you didn't really get the benefit, the Raiola wave, I guess you would say, with peer recruiting. And, you never know how successful a guy is just because he's, tweeting or whatever at somebody on social media. But it sure as heck can't hurt. And I do hope people are excited about it, because I think he's a good young guy. I know he maybe put the Illinois hat on a little too long for the Illinois fans' liking before he flipped it to the side, and there was that whole thing. But nonetheless, he's a guy who really did his research in picking Nebraska. And because of that, when he does talk to other recruits, when they're in town with him at the same time, he can give a meaningful dialogue to them about, this is why I like the place, this is why I believe in it. And that's big, because even though every class, a recruiting class, they connect to their quarterback. The 26 class is going to connect to Dayton Raiola. The 27 class has their guy now who's the headliner, and he's going to be the guy people get behind. It's just like it is on the field. It's the same way in recruiting. Guys love to know who's the guy who's going to be with me for 3 years, ideally 4 years, and Nebraska has that. So it was a good question you asked about which was more meaningful, the Taylor thing or the Marty Brown thing. And I think there's a good argument to be made that it should be the Trey Taylor thing. I just don't know if people see it that way, and maybe they should.
Yeah. Well, and one real quick interesting point that I thought Trey Taylor made that was a little surprising, but it talks about Dylan Raiola and his peer recruiting. Trey Taylor said his brother's going to be here, and I'm going to compete against him. Yeah. And he didn't care. He wanted me here. And he said to me, that spoke volumes about what the program means to him and to his family. And it, the fact that Dylan Raiola is recruiting competition for his brother, Trey Taylor took that as a positive.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. And I think people should go back and I know there's this thought we didn't learn anything this spring, and we did learn some stuff. And one of the things that really came out was when you listen to Dane Key and Isaiah Hunter talk about how Dylan was the first guy of anybody, not just from Nebraska, but first guy to message, be hey, we need you here. Raiola had his eye on certain receivers that could help this program, help this offense, help him. And in the same mind, what you're saying, that's a good long-term outlook by a guy who wants the program to be successful, and it means a lot to his family. So we can talk, has Raiola grown as a leader to help this team win 2 or 3 more games or whatever this next season? We're about to find out. But I think we have to say that he definitely has really taken it on his shoulders to be okay, I am the face of this thing in a big way, and I'm going to be out there and help this program get the talent in here to at least give it a fighting shot. And he's done a really good job with that. And
let's face it, you don't need all these guys to hit home runs. I mean, it feels like the same discussion we had with volleyball. Is there too many weapons? Is there too much talent? Well, maybe it's TJ Lateef, maybe it's Dayton Raiola or Dylan Raiola. You don't need them all to hit necessarily, because some, quite frankly, are going to transfer. I mean, 1 or 2 guys that's the way of the world in college football now. I mean, it's just some guys are going to hit and some guys just aren't.
Yep. You got to bring in competition whenever you can. That's why they were going. I mean, Nebraska did go after Marty Brown. They would have loved it for, where I know we're jumping around, but each position you want to add competition. So obviously at quarterback, obviously at running back, if you can get another guy in and it works and you have the resources to do it without overextending, you do it. We saw it at kicker, right? I mean, they're bringing in a third kicker to push that competition. So I think that's the way it's got to be. And you have to have guys that sort of thrive and want that, actually.
Great stuff, BC. We appreciate the time.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
There you go. Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. Now that there's no roster limits, I don't know that you talked about that. Would you bring in another kicker if you knew that it was 105?
No.
You probably don't bring in another kicker. But now you do. And now maybe basketball is the same way. You can get up to 17, 18 guys on the roster. It's a weird time in college athletics. It feels like nobody is in charge. It's like when the substitute teacher comes in and you just do whatever you want. It feels like teams are just doing whatever they want.
But that's kind of factual, too. They are.
Yeah. Let's get the break. One final segment. It's Husker Rewind. Mike Melby, Tom Stevens, more on the way.
Combined 60-plus years of broadcasting experience. Huh, I guess that means they're really old.
They're going to make him do this till he's 90.
Here's Tom Stevens and Mike Melby on 1499.3 KLIN.
Final segment, Husker Rewind. Tom Stevens, Mike Melby, here every Sunday, 5 to 7. One of the biggest stories of the college football offseason has been the relationship between North Carolina head coach Bill Belichick and his 24-year-old ex-cheerleader girlfriend, Jordan Hudson. Belichick did a interview with CBS Sunday News, Sunday morning, whatever they call that program, with CBS, discussing his new book. And he said that that CBS had edited clips to suggest that Jordan was attempting to control the conversation. This was the question that Bill Belichick was asked about Jordan. Basically, how'd you guys meet? Which it seems kind of innocent to me.
How did you guys meet?
Not talking about this.
That seems like Jordan is trying to control the conversation when she says, not talking about this. And the reporter just looks back at her. We're not? No, is what she says. And basically, they move on from there. CBS is contending there were no preconditions to the interview. Belichick says there were, so it's a he said, she said, literally.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with big age gaps. I mean, if you get along, you get along. It does seem like, he's 73, she's 24, 48 years, whatever it is. That's a lot. It seems like, what are you going to talk about? But you don't always have to talk either.
It's going to say.
Now they might get married, but if I were at the window betting on the relationship, they may get married. I'm not giving it more than 5 years. And you could probably bet on it in Vegas.
Possibly.
I
don't know.
But have fun.
It was such an odd, just the entire thing. The way she handled it just flat out came across as someone, she's a very attractive young lady. I don't know that I'd want to spend a whole lot of time around her because she seems like someone that would not be fun to be around.
Yeah. Apparently, she says they met on a plane. So I think she's already said that they met on a plane. So why would she have a problem with how did you meet?
And the other interesting thing is,
I don't know.
The interview supposedly stated that they had to focus on the book. Well, in the book, it states that they met on an airplane. How they met actually is in the book. If I remember reading bits and pieces of this story correctly, I am stunned that you had never heard of beer can chicken. Sorry, that's still during the break. I said, I'm going to make beer can chicken tomorrow. And Tom looked at me like,
no, I have heard of it. I just haven't, I've never done it. So I didn't know the process of beer can chicken. But you said you stick the can right up the hiney, right?
Yeah. The cavity.
And then it evaporates. Is it beer? Is it always beer, or can you use something else?
We'll use, on occasion I'll use beer. On occasion I use Dr. Pepper works really well.
You should give you're a very good cook.
Thank you.
You make great wings. I've had several things that you have made, chili, wings, that type of thing. But you love to spend time in the kitchen. I think you should bring a recipe every week because it's always around dinner time and I'm always getting hungry by the time this show is ending.
Pork medallions in a white wine, gorgonzola, and mushroom sauce.
See, I just like saying amazing. Gorgonzola. It's fun to say.
You serve it over spaghetti or whatever your favorite pasta is. We may have to do that. I'm bringing a recipe. Chicken wings. Buy chicken wings, put stuff on them, grill. See, it's that easy.
Done and done. Done. Do you want to talk a little bit about Husker baseball before we leave?
Yeah. I mean, hey,
you mentioned we haven't done it a lot. They did get the win today. I thought it was a big win. They really struggled, it seems like, in those Friday night games. They came back. They win on a walk-off on Saturday. And today they win 8-3. Case Sanderson, a big part of that. Here he is.
And a 1-0 count to Sanderson. The pitch. Case bounces one past the first baseman down the right field line. More coming for Nebraska. Bolin scores. Brumbaugh scores. It's a 2-run double for Sanderson. Nebraska starting to distance themselves here in the bottom of the eighth. It is a 7-3 Cornhusker lead.
That was a close game. Minnesota had controlled the game. Nebraska finally got into their bullpen and crept back to 4-3. They go ahead 5-3 on a Tyler Stone hit. And then they extended out with Case Sanderson. But they've won some dramatic games as of late. Their hitting is starting to come around. Their pitching is something that I just don't believe in this year. I don't think they have enough depth. Minnesota certainly didn't have that. And once they got into their bullpen, Minnesota left the same guy in at the end of the game, and Nebraska got to him. I just don't think Nebraska has enough to go in and survive 3 days at a Big Ten tournament and even in pool play and end up winning it. I don't think they have enough pitching.
Yeah,
they have enough hitting.
Losing Mason McConaughey did not help at all. And I get that. But at the end of the day, there's so many times that they had opportunities to score. I mean, how many times would you flip the radio on and, there's 2 on, 1 out, and whatever, Nebraska's down by 1. They need a clutch hit here. Oh, double play.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, it's just, there was always something that they did not do at the plate as well. And then, when you need pitchers to just simply throw strikes to give your team a chance to make it out, they walk 7 guys. And it's been a weird year, especially for the expectations at the beginning of the year.
Even last year where they win the Big Ten tournament, they didn't have a great year until they kind of got hot late.
Yeah.
We all thought when Nebraska joined the Big Ten that they would dominate the Big Ten, and they just never have. I think part of the problem is they have not been able to keep the best Nebraska baseball players home. The best baseball player I think they've had in the last 10 years, and maybe more, is Max Anderson. They got him because he went to Texas A&M, and then he realized that they didn't have room for him. So he ends up on the Nebraska roster, and that guy could hit. You wake him up at 3 o'clock in the morning, he can hit. That guy was just the best hitter I've seen at Nebraska in a long, long time.
I mean, I'll give you Max Anderson as one of, but I'm going to be hard pressed to say that anybody's better than Spencer Schwellenbach in the last 10 years.
Well, yeah,
because he was a two-way guy,
shortstop pitcher.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
But regardless,
I think been in the majors.
Yeah.
Whatever. What I'm saying is Nebraska can't keep Nebraska kids in the Big Three, especially. We talked about it in basketball. They're not keeping the Chucky Hepburns, the Hunter Salases of the world. They're from Omaha. They need to be at Nebraska. And the argument is, well, if you would have gotten Hunter Salas here or Chucky Hepburn, even on the rebound from Wisconsin, they would have cost you $3 million, 2.5, whatever it was. Nebraska doesn't have the budget for it. Baseball's a little bit different story. I don't know what kids from Nebraska are getting when they go to the SEC. I know they're probably getting more than they would be if they went to Nebraska. And I just wonder, in this day and age of NIL, where it's going. Football, and we just had BC on. We just had Mitch Sherman in the first hour. He said he doesn't have a bit of problem. Nebraska won't have any problem being competitive with NIL in the Big Ten in football. And basketball's a different story. Baseball's a different story. I think I heard that Nebraska had moved up dramatically in the Directors' Cup from like 24th to something like 8th because of bowling and wrestling doing so well this past year. I don't know that I care dramatically about the Directors' Cup. I think it was kind of cool when Nebraska won it in the 90s because Stanford always wins it because they dominate the Olympic sports.
Yep.
But I just would like to see Nebraska better in the Big Three: baseball, basketball, football.
I completely agree. Since we are touching on baseball, former Husker Jake Myers did something that has only been done in baseball history in the major leagues now 5 times. Jimmy Fox in 1933, Johnny Mize in 1939, Chet Labs in 1941, Ryan Howard in 2010, and Jake Myers in 2025. They went 4 for 4 with 2 home runs, a triple, and a double.
Wow.
I mean, I get it. It's an obscure, weird stat, but what Jake Myers
and he was
doing
like
for the Astros.
Wasn't he like a 7th or 8th round draft pick?
Yeah. Yeah, Jake Myers but you talk about.
He didn't have a great college career.
Big Red, man.
He was a good college player, but You ever think that Paul Myers, one of the best baseball players in Nebraska baseball history, his dad, thought about, you know what? I think I would switch with my son and have the better major league career instead of the college career.
Especially the money they make.
Right. Because if he's going out to dinner with the family, I'm making Jake pay.
Yeah.
And Paul's done really well in business and was with the Nebraska athletic department for years and years and years. He's doing fine.
Yep.
But I'm just saying, Jake, you're paying.
No, I just thought that was pretty cool. I saw that on a tweet earlier today. And just kind of, you sit there and think about it. And, I'm a numbers guy way back before the internet. I ran a rotisserie baseball league that in the back of the Sporting News, I took
rotisserie.
out an ad.
See, you say that and it makes me hungry.
Yeah.
Rotisserie.
There you go. Rotisserie beer can chicken. Nah, that won't work. It'll spill.
In case you haven't heard, Jordy Ball is pretty good. The Nebraska pitcher has been named a finalist for National Player of the Year. He's also a finalist for the award in 22 and 23. But she is on pace to set school records at batting average, slugging percentage, extra bases, total bases. In fact, I think she already has passed the total bases. I mean, probably, if not the best two-way player, top 10 in the country as far as two-way players.
Top 2, 3
in softball.
Like, wow.
And she never hit when she was at Oklahoma.
No, she just
How
won
is that
national
even
titles.
possible that somebody who has hit 17 home runs and is batting .468 didn't hit at the previous school? I guess that tells you how good Oklahoma is.
Yeah.
Hey, let's leave and then come back next week.
Okay.
All right. Next Sunday, 5 to 7. See you, Mike. Bye-bye.
See you.